For more than 30 years, he was one of the most powerful men in the world, an absolute ruler who outlasted 8 US presidents and redrew the map of the modern Middle East from the shadows. His word was law, his authority unquestioned. He didn't just command a nation, he commanded a sprawling network of military and political power that stretched across an entire region. But this man was never supposed to rule. Born into a poor clerical family, Ali Khamenei's journey from total obscurity to becoming Iran's shadow emperor was anything but a sure thing. So how did a man from the margins of society rise to command a nation and defy the world for a generation? This is the story of the man who went from rags to ruler. You can't really understand the man without understanding the world that forged him. The Iran of Khamenei's youth was a country torn between ancient traditions and an aggressive Western-backed push for modernization. Born on April 19, 1939, in Mashhad, Iran's holiest city, he was the second of 8 children in an ethnic Azeri family with very little money. His father, Sayyid Javad Khamenei, was a respected Islamic scholar, but a poor one. In his own telling, Khamenei described a childhood marked by poverty, where the family often had nothing for dinner but bread and raisins and lived in a single-room house with a gloomy basement. This deeply religious and stark upbringing shaped his entire worldview. His educated mother introduced him to literature and history, while his father set him on a path of religious study. He started Quranic studies at just 4 years old and entered a seminary at 11, dedicating his life to the clergy. In the 1950s, he journeyed to the religious hubs of Najaf in Iraq and Qom in Iran. There, he studied under the era's most important scholars, including one fiery cleric who would change Iranian history forever, Ruhollah Khomeini. This is where Khamenei's political fire was lit. He became a fierce opponent of Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi's secular government and its cozy relationship with the West. His activism kicked into high gear in 1963, leading to him being arrested and jailed multiple times by the Shah's infamous secret police, Savak. But the state's brutality only hardened his resolve and cemented his loyalty to the exiled Khomeini. He became a central player in the underground revolutionary movement. When mass protests finally exploded in 1978, Khamenei was on the front lines, helping to organize the collapse of a 2,500-year-old monarchy. The 1979 revolution was here, and with it, a massive power vacuum. Iran was a nation in chaos, and for a loyal disciple like Ali Khamenei, this was a moment of pure opportunity. With the Shah gone, Khomeini returned to Iran, and Khamenei was immediately pulled into the new regime's inner circle. Once a political prisoner, he was now on the powerful Revolutionary Council, tasked with building a new government from the ashes of the monarchy. His rise was stunningly fast. Khomeini made him Tehran's Friday prayer leader, a huge public platform, and then deputy defense minister. For a little while, he even ran the newly formed Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC. His loyalty was soon tested by violence. In June 1981, as the new republic was violently eliminating its opponents, a bomb hidden inside a tape recorder exploded on the podium while Khamenei was speaking. He survived the assassination attempt, but his right arm was paralyzed for life. This brush with martyrdom only made him a bigger hero within the regime. Later that year, after President Mohammad Ali Rajai was assassinated, Khamenei was elected president with an unbelievable 97% of the vote, becoming the first cleric to ever hold that office. But the presidency was mostly for show. The real power was with the Prime Minister, Mir Hossein Mousavi, a man Khamenei constantly argued with. His most important experience from this time came from his role in the brutal 8-year Iran-Iraq war. As president, he often visited the front lines, gaining a deep knowledge of military strategy and building strong personal bonds with the commanders of the IRGC, the very same institution that would one day become the foundation of his power. The ultimate prize, though, still seemed impossible to reach. The man chosen to succeed Khomeini was a much more senior Grand Ayatollah, Hussein Ali Montazeri. But in 1989, Khomeini suddenly dismissed Montazeri, throwing the succession into chaos. When Khomeini died on June 4, 1989, the Assembly of Experts met to pick a new leader. The constitution at the time demanded that the supreme leader be a marja, or a source of emulation, one of the highest ranks in Shia Islam. Khamenei was just a mid-ranking cleric, a Hojjatul Islam, and simply didn't have the religious street cred. What happened next was a masterclass in backroom politics. Powerful figures, especially the influential politician Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani, pushed the idea that Khomeini had privately wanted Khamenei to be his successor. Even though Khamenei himself said he wasn't qualified, the Assembly of Experts voted to make him the temporary leader. Then, that July, a constitutional referendum was rushed through, conveniently scrapping the rule that the supreme leader had to be a Grand Ayatollah. On August 6, 1989, Ali Khamenei was confirmed as the second supreme leader of Iran. The man who was never supposed to rule had just been given absolute power. Khamenei's unbelievable rise was complete. But grabbing power is one thing. Holding on to it for nearly 4 decades is something else entirely. The story of his long reign shows how he didn't just transform his own job, but the entire Iranian state. Before we dive into his decades as the Shadow Emperor, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you won't miss our next deep dive into history. Lacking the religious credentials and the magnetic personality of Khomeini, Khamenei spent the next 37 years carefully building a system that was all about protecting him. He became the ultimate micromanager, learning how to pull every lever of power inside Iran's complicated political machine. His game plan was simple: lock down the loyalty of the country's most powerful institutions and mercilessly crush anyone who dared to stand against him. His number one tool was the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Having forged tight bonds with its leaders during the war, he turned the IRGC into a massive military, economic, and intelligence empire. It became the regime's iron fist, putting down protests at home and spreading Iranian power abroad through its elite Quds force and a network of proxy militias known as the Axis of Resistance. He personally installed loyal followers to run the courts, the Guardian Council, and all state media, making sure that every pillar of the government answered to him and him alone. But this iron grip on power came at a terrible cost to the Iranian people. He pushed aside moderates, reformers, and anyone else who had been part of the early revolutionary coalition. When huge protests, known as the Green Movement, erupted after the disputed 2009 presidential election, Khamenei's regime responded with shocking violence, cementing his image as an unbending hardliner. This brutal suppression became a hallmark of his rule, seen again during the nationwide Woman Life Freedom protests that shook his regime to its core. On the world stage, Khamenei's reign was one of non-stop defiance, aimed mostly at the United States and Israel. He made Iran's civilian nuclear program the core of his national security strategy, all while issuing a religious decree or fatwa forbidding the actual production of nuclear weapons. This balancing act, however, led to crippling international sanctions that isolated Iran and wrecked its economy for decades. He was a pragmatic hardliner, a survivor who would sometimes allow small reforms to let off steam. But he never gave an inch on his core beliefs. His power seemed absolute, surviving popular uprisings, intense international pressure, and even a 2014 fight with prostate cancer. Ali Khamenei's long and unyielding rule came to a sudden, violent end on February 28, 2026. At 86 years old, he was killed during a spiraling military conflict with the United States and Israel, as claimed by then US President Donald Trump. His death, after 37 years at the top, left a gaping hole at the very center of the Islamic Republic. He started his life in a one-room house in Mashhad and ended it as the Middle East's longest-serving head of state, a man who held the destiny of an entire country in his hands. He inherited a revolution and remade it in his own image, turning the office of supreme leader into an all-powerful institution and militarizing the state through his patronage of the IRGC. The story of Ali Khamenei is a raw lesson in the nature of power. It's about how one man, through a mix of ideological fire, strategic patience, and utter ruthlessness, can rise from humble beginnings to command a nation. He was the product of a revolution that promised freedom, but instead built a system of total control. From the poor alleyways of Mashhad to the summit of power in Tehran, his journey from rags to ruler left a deep and controversial mark on Iran and the world, a legacy of defiance, oppression, and power that will be argued over for generations.